Welcome
organization
to
is Urban Food
Urbanhood,
Alliance.
your
We
learning
are a
platform.
501c3 organization. What we are food bank. We help families who is in need, and at the same time, we help families, in any ways going through difficulty. They do not want to go any kind of local food bank, any places, and then with our relationship building, some of them just comes join our educational program. And we happen to find out, and then we serve them, help them any way we can. And one of our educational program from Urban Food is urbanhood.org. At Urbanhood, we meet every week. That you have seen in meetup, so many training, so many classes free. It's everything we're sharing educational purpose only. But every Sunday, usually Sunday, what we do on the stock market, we talk about the economy of the market and what we do and what happens, the events in the country, outside the country. We talk on Sunday. And then once we talk after economy, then we get into talking about the stocks, those who like to do trading in stock for short term or long term, commodity stocks, crypto, we touch up that. And then we touch up about real estate. But every week we do week ahead. We call it look ahead. So by all means, if you are around, please join us. And every Sunday, all the details are on the website. But today, that on the real estate side, that me and my friend Amir, many years we know each other. So we thought, hey, why not we do something online? In the past, we have done in person. So somehow we are able to figure out a time, and just it worked out. Today, I wanted to thank everybody for joining us. At the same time, thanking Amir preparing the content. I know about half an hour ago, he told me I updated my content based on what we discussed, the topic. Awesome. So I'm sure you'll find a great value out of it. So without further ado, let's go ahead, Amir. The floor is yours.
Everyone, and good evening, folks. My name is Amir Motiwala, and the name of my company is Grand Home Investments. I hope you can see the slide right now. I'm just going to do a brief introduction and then go into the topic right away. So again, very briefly about myself, I've done a lot of flips in the New Jersey area, mostly kind of focusing on the Central Jersey area. I've done a few outside the state, but mostly focusing on Central New Jersey. Have done all kind of renovations, new construction, add a level, interior renovation, adding a garage and those kind of things. So I've been through a lot of construction activity in the past few years. So I'll walk you through the first few slides, which are more kind of theoretical. And then we can jump more into like what are the sources of how you can buy houses, and we'll go more into Q&A mode. So my slides are not very long. Hopefully I'll finish in about 15-20 minutes. So I think the first few slides are going to just talk about what are flips, just to give you an overview. I know most of you know about this, so we'll just breeze through some of these slides, but just getting into what are flips, right? It's more, I mean, why do people invest in real estate? Like, let's start with that first. So with real estate, you can sometimes get more predictable returns than stocks and commodities. I mean, these days the stock market has been doing pretty well, so that's another good thing. But usually real estate have more predictable returns. It can hedge against inflation. It does usually have a higher rate of return than most other investments, and it is easier. Like if you're taking a loan or you're borrowing money from people, usually the loans are cheaper if you're buying a real estate. Going into the next slide, this talks about what is a fix and flip strategy. So this slide talks about how an investor can purchase a house, remodel it, and then sell it at a higher price. Repairs are undertaken and renovation remodeling is done to create value. A fix and flip strategy is a tactical strategy. It's not like a long-term strategy where you can buy the house, fix it in a few months, and hopefully you should be able to sell it out. These are some of the steps. I know folks are still joining us as we speak, but these are the 7 steps, more or less. I know some people would probably add a few more steps than what we have, but I think it starts with researching the market. The second is the identification of the property. The third is, list all the repairs and renovation needed in the property. I mean, if you are doing new construction and at a level, then of course, you have to start quite early with the township, the zoning, and all that kind of stuff. Then you get into the estimation of the cost and renovation. Then you evaluate the property price after repairs and renovation to see what the market is like at the time of sale. Then you actually do the repairs and renovation, and then finally you sell the property. So some of the advantages of fix and flip strategy are, you can have immediate realization of gains. Capital usually is not tied up for quite a few years. It's easier to predict returns and take a calculated approach. There's no risk in terms of renting and do renovations of the property, although that's another very good strategy as well. And sometimes you can even do flip by borrowing money. You can take a loan, or you can take loan from other investors as well. So you don't need to invest all your money in doing a flip. So I think let's focus on the first step, right? I think the most difficult step, and people who have been doing this know the most difficult step right now is how do you buy properties? I know in this current market is really crazy. A lot of people want to buy. People are, when a property comes on the market, especially if it is a distressed property, you do see a lot of offers on the market right away. So these are some of the ways you can acquire real estate. I mean, the first category is really the auctions. You have the online auctions like Husbo, auction.com, and Zoom. I think those are the 3 big players. I know there are quite a few other ones which are smaller, but these 3 have most of the online auctions. We can go into more detail about them if somebody has a question. Otherwise, we'll just keep walking through the slide. The next is the sheriff auctions. So every town or every county, most is usually on the county level. They do sheriff auctions, a physical auction where you can go and bid on the property. This was a very popular model since COVID has started. You don't see a lot of sheriff auctions happening. I mean, they have started recently, but I think they're only auctioning properties which are vacant. So before you would see like an auction every week. Now you would see like a monthly auction. And even the number of houses probably I would say is about 10% of what they used to have, or maybe even less, not even 10% of what they used to have before. So so both of these channels have limited availability now. Even the online auctions, you don't see a lot of inventory as well as sheriff auctions. So the next one is really using the local MLS, Zillow.com, or if you have contacts with realtors, they can call you if they have any distressed property. Or these days you see a lot of like state sales have popped up as well. So this is by far the biggest inventory holder right now. So you would get the most properties these days through local MLS and realtors, and you'll have to really compete with other people in buying that property. And last but not the least, if you're doing flips, you have a lot of wholesalers in the market, which if you have contacts with or ties with from before, they have like email chains, they have like websites, and they even message you whenever they get a good property. And they know if you're in that market, they will probably message you and say, hey, so-and-so have this property in this market, this is the word, if you want to take a viewing of the property. So that's another venue where you can buy properties. So I'll pause here and see if anybody has a question on this slide, especially on how to acquire real estate, or anyone would like to share their experience about this. I'll just pause here for a few seconds. Brother
Do you
Mushi,
not
other
talk
people
about
can.
the?
Sorry, go ahead.
Do you not talk about the liens? I mean, if you get the property from the auctions.
Okay, so I think most of the times, like let me give you an example of a sheriff auction, right? So when they do a sheriff auction, I would say 95% of the time they would announce any liens on the property. Most of the liens, usually typically in a sheriff auction, would be real estate taxes, water and sewer. Like you have to be careful of some towns where the water is public, like owned by the town, and they could hit you hard because usually that would not be passed on, or they would not waive it. They would come after you, the new property owner. There is sometimes lien from a bank, which if it is there, they would announce it. I have hardly seen any property which would go by where they would not announce a lien. And if there is something they do not announce, then you always have a right to cancel the auction and get your money back. Look, you can go back to the foreclosing attorney and say, look, this was the auction. I bought the property. I did my title search, and you guys did not announce this $10,000 lien on the property. I mean, I have had instances where it had happened, and usually the bank would kind of reduce the price of the property by that much amount. But again, you do get some, what do you call it, like, water bills. That's one. I got one property where it had an IRS lien. So so those kind of liens you can sometimes surprise you. But in most cases, if there is a big lien, you can always back off from the sheriff auction as well. I think that was Vakar, right? Did I answer your question?
Yeah. What about the online auctions, the Hoopzoo and auction.com? Do they announce the liens as well, or?
Yeah, I think, see, with those auctions, I would say they are a little bit more safer than a sheriff auction because they give you a few weeks to do title work, right? So normally, either you would select the bank's title company. So let's assume auction.com or Husbu is selling a bank property, and they would give you time. So you can select your own title company, or you can go with whatever the bank title company is. Usually they would give you a discount. They would say, look, if you're going to use the bank title company, we're going to pay the title charges because we want to control that process. But you can always say, look, I don't want to use your title company. I'm going to use my own title company. I have used both. And normally, you have time to do the title work after you win the auction. So if there is something which comes out in the title work, which the bank did not announce or you did not know at the time of the auction, then you can always back off with some of these auctions as well. But is normally more safer because you have not committed. I mean, you have kind of given your initial $2,500 deposit, but you haven't given a big deposit yet for these online auctions versus sheriff auctions. You have to pay typically, I mean, it depends on which county it is, but normally you have to pay about 20% of the price right at the time of the auction. So you have to put a lot of money upfront with a sheriff auction versus online auctions. You still have a few more days. You can do your due diligence.
I have one question. Like on online auctions like Hoopzoo or auction.com, so how much down like payment we have to make immediately, or in like you have to pay all amount? Let's say the property is like $200,000, so you have to pay whole amount in like 2 or 3 months. How it works?
I mean, look, so it's a two-step process, right? The first step is that once you sign the agreement of the sale, you have to put a deposit. Most typically, there is a fixed amount of deposit. Usually, it would vary about between 5 and 10,000. It also depends on the value of the property. So if it is a $500,000 property, you will have to give more advance versus like 100,000 property, you will have to give less advance. So you have to give that advance in the first, like, let's say 5 days, right? Or whenever you sign the contract, I think you have to send in the deposit within 48 hours of winning the auction. The rest of the money, typically they would give you 3 to 5 weeks. At least they give you 3 weeks to give the rest of the money. Some of the auctions, they also allow mortgage. So if you're taking a mortgage, they give you that much time to take the mortgage. But if you're doing a cash transaction, they will at least give you 3 weeks to put in the money and buy or close on the property. I would use the term closing, right? So the closing typically would happen around 3 weeks from when you sign the contract. Does that answer your question?
Yes. And
Okay.
one more thing, you said the mortgage, right? So let's say if somebody want to do mortgage on one of the property, right? So they can apply and bank approves that kind of mortgage on foreclosure or flipping houses or no?
So with sheriff auctions, you cannot do conventional mortgage. You can do like hard cash, that kind of stuff, where you can borrow money against the property. Who can loan you the money? Usually the rates for that is really high, but they can give you hard cash. But with some of these properties, Hubzu, auction.com, Zoom, when they put the property on sale, they will let you know whether you can do a mortgage or not, because a lot of these properties could have a tenant living there, like the old owner could still be living there. I mean, these days it's a little bit different because they are not allowed to sell a lot of these properties. But typically, if you take COVID away, these auction properties would have a lot of inventory where tenants or the old owner might still be living inside. If that's the case, then it's very difficult to get a mortgage because you will not be able to get inside the home, do an appraisal, or even look at the house from inside. So with some online auctions, you cannot step inside the home because if somebody is living there, then they will put a disclaimer on the site that please do not disturb the occupant, right? And then sheriff auction, in most cases, or almost 99% of the cases, you will not get a chance to see the property beforehand. And again, with online auctions, and I'm sure other people can contribute because they would have their own experience. From lately, what I've seen, you don't get a deal from these places right now, to be honest, because even before COVID, the prices had gone up quite high from all of these online auctions as well as sheriff auctions. And I'm sure after COVID started and with the market being crazy, you don't get a very good deal from any of these things. I would rather avoid them at this time because some of these sites, they also bid themselves. So if you're bidding, you don't know if you're bidding against another person or you're bidding against some of these people who are working for these sites. So they artificially inflate the price as well. And a lot of times I've seen there are a lot of like non-serious bidders who would just bid really, really high, and you would be competing against them, and then last minute they will just back off, right? So if you really were bidding against some non-serious investor who really inflated the price and you were bidding against that person, you would really make it, they would really make the price really high for you. So you have to be cautious. I think the best strategy would be to predetermine the price before the auction starts and say, look, this is my final price. And if I can get it at this price, I'll go for it. Otherwise, I'll just leave the property.
Thank you.
Yes, hi, Mr. Amir. I have a quick question. Since you've been in this business for so long, can you share any of your worst experience? You bought a property and you figured out there is a big oil tank there, and the oil tank is like a leak oil tank, or there is a septic tank. You didn't know that before you buying the property, and how you resolve that problem, and like how much that cost. Like I'm just trying to get the worst scenario, like the worst happened with you, like since you're doing this for so long.
Okay. So Alhamdulillah, I have been lucky, I would say, or I mean, I haven't got into, I mean, I have discovered oil tanks, and I do generally do a scan on the property before I buy them in most cases. Of course, you cannot do that in a sheriff auction. I have bought some properties where I knew before buying that the property has an oil tank. Again, I'm not going to go very deep into this topic because this itself is a huge topic, right? But there are ways you can minimize your risk by, number one, if the oil tank is there, you can do some sampling of the oil tank. There are companies who would go on all sides of the property and do some soil sampling, and they will pretty much tell you that the leak is, if there is a leak, is it a minor leak or a major leak? I mean, so far I have not experienced a property which had like a water table issue or where the leak was really huge. I have been through properties which had minor leaks and you had to do a cleanup, but that cleanup, you have to go to the DEP and get an NFA report and all that stuff. So if the leak is minor, usually it doesn't take too long, maybe a couple of months or maybe a little bit more than a month, because you're working with a audit. If the company is good, right? I mean, one thing you have to be very cautious about is some of these companies who would charge you like $1,000 or $1,200 to remove the tank. What they will do is they will give you a very low quotation, but then they'll start messing up with you by doing sampling and all that stuff when it is not required. Because if the township inspector comes to see when you're pulling the tank, in most towns they will not ask you to sample the soil if they don't see a hole in the tank. But there are companies out there, just to make money, they will start doing sampling and all that kind of stuff and unnecessarily create the case with DEP. So again, I think the question was being my worst. My worst has been like a little bit spill where you had to do a cleanup and get the NFA report. But other than that, so far I've not experienced something very major. Discuss how you can buy the property, what are the sources. Now we're going to talk about the improvement models. So I think there are quite a few models, right? So starting with a new construction or vacant land, this does take a lot before you start doing any physical work, like a few months actually. You have to go through zoning, subdivision, engineering approvals, plans. So it does take a lot before you start doing any work at the property. The second one is second floor additions or extensions, or you add to the first floor and then add a second floor. Typically, you would do that mostly on ranches and Cape Cods. It does include zoning analysis, FAR analysis, approvals from the township. There are setback issues, like how much a property starts from the front, the side, and the back, and from the two sides and the back. And then what is the maximum square footage allowed from depending on the zone of the property or the plot, right? So you can do second floor additions. Then you can also do renovations where you're not doing a lot of addition, but you can convert a garage into a living space. If you had 2 garages, then you can convert one of the garages into a living space. Or if there was an old house without a garage, you can add a garage to the property. So that's kind of simple home additions. And then the last and the most simplest route is just renovating an existing property, where you just take the property, clean it up, paint it, fix the bathrooms or upgrade all the bathrooms, upgrade the kitchen. It doesn't stop there. It can go from just interior renovations to exterior renovation, including roofing, siding, and a lot of other stuff. You can finish a basement. So, there's a lot to it. So those are some of the models where you can use to flip a house. So some of the improvements you have to make to the property is, again, you have to do electrical, plumbing, and structural repairs. You have to enhance the interior appeal, like, if you have wallpapers, you kind of remove them now. You do upgrade the flooring, doors, windows, new kitchen cabinets. You would upgrade the bathrooms. Then again, you can remodel the backyard, the front patio, deck, and landscaping. Then you can improve the heating, the condenser, the cooling, the AC, and all that kind of stuff. Then you have some safety upgrades. If you're redoing a lot of the house, the township might ask you to install electric fire alarms and carbon monoxides and all that kind of stuff. And then you can also, as I mentioned before, you can convert like a living space. If you have a huge living space, you can convert that into like a first floor bedroom, like a guest suite kind of a thing on the first floor. So you can do some kind of garage additions or stuff like that on the property. Very important thing before we go into this slide is some people can get very excited when they see a property. They might say, what, the property is, I can buy the property for 200,000 and I'll be able to sell it for 300,000, right? So when you're doing your calculation, you have to really make sure you account for all expenses, because the transaction cost does take up a lot of value, or a lot of like, you know, if you have a spread of, like, you're buying it for 200,000, you're selling it for 300,000, you might as well spend, you probably will spend about 20 to 30K in just the transaction cost, which is what I've shown here. The attorney cost, the type, I mean, you know, you have buyer, when you're buying the property, you have some transaction costs like the attorney fees, the title work, you know, the advanced taxes you'll be paying to the township. Then when you're selling the property, again, you have attorney cost, you have unpaid real estate taxes, then you have transfer taxes, and then you also have a lot of holding costs, like, you know, you have to pay utilities, you have to pay the real estate tax while you're holding the property. Then there are some expenses which you might not think of upfront, like, you know, you have to cut the grass every week, you have to do landscaping outside, you know, you have to pay for property insurance, you have to pay, if you're staging the property, you might spend like maybe another $1,500, $2,000 on property staging. So you have to account for all of these costs when you're buying a property. It's very important that you run all these numbers before you start really buying anything. So sometimes the spread is really low, then you can get stuck with a lot of these expenses. So it is really, really important to make sure you account for all these expenses before you jump into buying or renovating a property. Any questions on this?
Yes, you know, what's the staging?
Staging is normally when you complete the renovation of a property, you might want to put some furniture in the property, like, you know, to show how the home will appear when somebody moves in. So you can put a sofa in the living room, you can put a bed in the bedroom, you can put some stuff in the bathroom to make it more appealing. Does that make sense?
Yes, and you know, it is only done, you know, for the photo shoot, you know, for the photo of the property.
I mean, it depends on the vendor. In most cases, they would leave the furniture for like a good 30 days. So you can do it for the photos only. In most cases, you know, they will leave the furniture out there for like at least 30 days or until the house has a contract. So when people come to see the house, they would see the staging furniture as well. There's another model where people do virtual staging, where the furniture actually is not in the house, but they just you know, do a Photoshop of the furniture into the pictures.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I do have a sample sheet, but I want to keep the last 15 minutes for Q&A. So I'll definitely stop in the next 4 minutes. I do have a sample sheet which I use normally. Some of my flips, let me move this one to my other screen, where, you know, if you look at the estimates, right? So you can create a simple sheet where you can say, you know, this is how much I'm going to be spending on the framing, the electric labor, the plumbing labor, the roofing. If you're doing like a second floor addition, you might be doing stucco, labor, renovation, permit fee, architecture fee, license fee. You know, if you're renovating the bathroom, how much you're going to spend on each, kitchen, doors, sparkle and sheetrock, insulation, flooring material, and the list just goes on, right? So I think it's a good idea to have some kind of a sheet where you can kind of estimate all your expenses and then see if there is any room within this flip, right? So, you know, this is my summary sheet, which I normally use. It has the cost of the home, total cost, sale price, gross profit. Then you have insurance, utilities, and all that stuff. You know, your closing cost, which I discussed earlier, and then, you know, how much you're going to get profit for yourself or your investors, right? So I'm not going to go very deep into this sheet because we don't have too much time, but let me just go back to my slide right here. Okay, going into the next sheet, and I think this is pretty much it. So there have been some challenges during COVID, right? I think I discussed some of them early on. The first one, I think most of you are aware, we do have a lot of inventory shortage. We don't have a lot of bank sales going on, not a lot of sheriff sales going on. So if a property comes on the market and it's a distressed property, a state sale, or somebody wants to just sell it without fixing anything, there are a lot of buyers trying to compete for the same property. So you have to be really aggressive, and the price is kind of going up these days. I mean, a typical ranch in like central Jersey earlier before COVID, I mean, you could get a good ranch to add a second level from anywhere from 200 to like 260, 270 in decent areas. Now that price has gone up from 200, 250 to like 300, 350. So definitely the prices have gone up. So again, I touched on the increased buying prices. There's a labor shortage, right? There's a shortage of labor almost everywhere you go, from the company delivering the cement to the company delivering the siding. They have shortages of material as well as labor, delivery truck guys, people who bring the cement guys, and all kind of stuff. The architectural work is also very slow. All the architects I know of, they're swamped with work. I mean, I've tried, like in the past few months, I've tried like 5 or 6 architects, and they're all very busy. So that one is taking much more time. Townships are taking much longer to approve permits because they have a lot of permits. They were closed for some time during COVID. Now everything is kind of opened up. But then IDA came, and then it added to more backlogs with a lot of people trying to replace water heaters and furnaces and condensers and basements. So, if you have a permit these days, it's taking much longer than before. And the last but not the least, the prices of material also has gone up, like plumbing supplies. I know lumber, everybody knows lumber went up, but it came down quite a bit lately. So that is kind of under control now. But again, you have shortages in lumber. If you go try to buy a special beam, you won't get that. You will need at least 6 to 8 weeks to order a special beam. Similarly, windows, like special windows, they're taking like 6 to 8 weeks, like bathroom windows where you need a special class, that's taking about 6 to 8 weeks. So there's material shortage, spotty things like, last week I couldn't find the fire block, like it's a spray you spray to fire block. The fire block was not available in any Home Depot or Lowe's 2 weeks ago. So things all of a sudden become short. I think the first question I see here is from Zubair Khan. He asks, do you need any special kind of license or something to get into sheriff auctions or the online auctions? So the answer is no. For sheriff auctions or online auctions, you don't need to have any special license. Anybody can go. With sheriff auctions, you need to carry money with you. You need to carry certified checks up to 20% of the amount of the house. But if you are just going in to see, anybody can go and see the sheriff auction. Next one I have from Abdul Muhammad. Do we need to pay cash if buying an auction? Most of the times you have to pay cash, but there are always cases where you can buy a property online from Husbo or auction.com where you can get a mortgage. Just moving on, how and where can I find the wholesalers? I mean, there are wholesalers available on the internet. You can search them up, but normally, you do see a lot of emails coming from wholesalers as well. I think this also, you develop a relationship with time. So, there are some wholesalers which are very small. They don't want to do a lot of email blasts and stuff. If they have a property, they will just message me because I've worked with them in the past. So, you develop a relationship with them as you work along. And then if they know you're a serious buyer, they will first reach out to you before they even reach out to anyone else. So that's a good way you can acquire properties. Okay, moving on. If there's any other question, based on the current, this is from Quresh, based on the current market, what is the right place to find these type of properties? Again, as I said, these days, I think you will get most properties from the MLS. I mean, to be honest, get most of my properties through regular MLS these days, through realtors and properties which are listed on Zillow.com or on the MLS website for the county or for the area you are buying the properties. I mean, you still get properties if you go in, if you give an aggressive offer, they most likely, I mean, if they know you're an investor, they're not going to back off. They might take like a 30,000-40,000 lower offer from someone like you than a retail buyer who would just go and do all the inspections and all that kind of stuff. So, Okay, so Wakar is clarifying. He didn't ask a question. It was another brother who had a similar voice as him. So, okay, moving on. Crowdfunding. That's brother.
I know the CFO of the company which Faisal just presented. Shamshad is
Okay.
a friend.
Nice, very good. Okay, so what is the so this is from Rima. What is the ideal percentage of a down payment for buying a property, considering mortgage insurance? So again, I might not be an expert on this topic. You can go to one of these mortgage companies, but I think if you're looking at mortgage insurance, I think if you pay 20%, then you don't have to pay the PMI insurance. So if you're buying a property for yourself and you don't want to pay the mortgage insurance, you want to put down 20%. But again, I'm not an expert in this field. Okay, from Zubair Khan, do you mind sharing your number? I live in Iceland and I have heard about you from my cousin. So I think Zubair, if you want, we can do an offline session and I can talk to you more about this offline since I think it's more about sharing numbers and probably more of a private question. Okay, so this is the next one is from Tar. What is the time frame from purchase to sale on average? Okay, so this is a pretty good question and a loaded question. Usually, if it is simple flip, it can take from 6 to 7 months. But again, there are a lot of times where you can get stuck with the township. So I don't want to take names, but a lot of townships are pretty good to deal with. But there are some more in South Jersey. I mean, I had an instance of a township in Manalapan, which took much longer because they are pretty particular about a lot of things. I mean, I have had inspections where when you do a new gas line, you have to provide a riser diagram from an architect, and this inspector was going with a tape measuring how much was the length on the diagram versus how much was it actual, right? So if you come across such an inspector, then he's going to take a very long time to approve things for you. So it really depends. So if you get across one of these townships which are very particular about CEO and about inspections, some framing inspectors, I had one in South Plainfield. He's a nut guy. If you get across, if he comes for your inspection, you will probably fail 5 or 6 times before he'll approve you. So it really depends. I mean, if you're not doing a lot, if you're not only just renovating the bathrooms and the kitchen, then there's not a lot of risk. But if you are adding a new bathroom, adding a new furnace where you had a boiler before and you're converting the boiler into a furnace and you're taking permits, then of course, it's going to take much longer to finish your house because you have to close all the permits before you can sell the property. The good news is in this market, it is a seller's market, and people are continuing. They want to buy houses, right? The interest rates are low. So these days, once the property is complete, you do get a contract on the house fairly quickly because of the craziness in the market right now. Okay, then we do have a wholesaler. Kevin is here. He added his email address here, so you guys can shoot him an email if you need any properties from him. He might be able to send you the list as well. Thanks, Kevin, for putting your name out here. So I think the chat list is done. Any other question you guys have from what I covered? We have probably another 5 minutes to go.
So, Amir, instead of buying distressed property, if you have the pool of investors, why not just basically buy the land and then build the townhome? Will that not be the right way of doing?
Yes, I mean, that's another very good model. So there are a few things. The first thing is that if you are buying a land in towns like Edison, Piscataway, South Brunswick, I mean, some of these towns, they have very less inventory of vacant lands, right? I mean, most of the lands are taken. So if you want to buy like a 5-acre lot where you can subdivide, and build, that's a very good model. But the problem is this subdivision process sometimes takes forever. And attorneys, working through the attorneys, working through the towns. So there's a lot of upfront cost which you have to spend. So let's assume I buy a land for 700,000, right? It's 3 acre, and I know I can build 6 houses in this piece of land. Most of the time, you will not get a good deal if the zoning is already good, right? So in most cases, you have to go to the town zoning committee to make sure they let you convert from R1 to, let's assume, R10. I mean, these are usually the codes of zoning. R1 usually is an acre, R10 is usually 100 by 100 lot. So to get the town to agree, you have to do a lot. You have to do a lot of engineering, you have to walk through the land, you have to make sure there's no wetland. So it sounds, all this stuff sounds very simple. I mean, you will see people say, oh, I bought a land and I subdivided and I made 5 houses. But in actual terms, you do have to spend a lot of cost upfront. And if you're borrowing money from an investor, most of the times people will not like the money go wasted, because I've been through this before where I did bid on like a 5 acre property, but I couldn't pass the, what do you call it, the wetlands, right? I mean, I got stuck in the wetland issue. It took almost 8 months and I already spent $4,000 on it. So people are kind of scared of those scenarios. So it sounds, I mean, once you get the land and you can subdivide it, then you have a jackpot, but there's a lot of upfront cost and time you have to spend subdividing those lands. It's not an easy process. It's a very complicated process to go through engineering, the township, the hearing, the zoning, and all those things. Sometimes it can take a year, maybe a year and a half to go through this whole process.
So what is the best option? Like people like us who are novice, instead of buying the property, is it better for them to become an investor for at least for some time and then try to buy their own property?
I mean, everybody has their own choice. I don't want to say that, you start investing or you start buying. Again, everybody has their own comfort level. Doing flips is not as simple as you might think. I got very lucky in my first few properties that they came out simple, and I gained a lot of experience. But I've seen people who get stuck with an oil tank in the first purchase. So again, it's not rocket science. If you're just buying a property which is a simple flip, like if you're just painting the house, doing bathrooms and stuff, renovating the bathrooms, then it's an easy process. But if you get into something where you did not see the framing or the basement, or there was structural issue with the house, then you can get stuck too. So it depends on the comfort level. But yes, I mean, if you have a job, if you don't want to go into the whole messy process, then yeah, you can invest with someone as well. Okay, we have 4 more minutes to go. Anything else? Any other question? Okay, so we have a couple more.
Yeah, a
Go
quick
ahead.
question. What's your outlook on the market?
Okay, so again, I don't have a crystal ball. I know we also have Shumail on the line, and I'm sure there are they can probably talk about this too. I'll give my 2 cents and then see if anybody else has a viewpoint. So from what I see, and I'll be really short because we don't have too much time. From what I saw in the past few months, that the market kind of slowed down a little bit in August. And I think the reason for that was that everybody probably went on vacation in August, right? Because people did not go out for like a year and a half. So all of a sudden, everybody started going on vacation in August. So that's why I think the market went down a little bit, or it was a little slow. Then September, the first few weeks, a couple of weeks, I saw some slowness. And I think the reason for that was that, kids, they started to go back to school, and the parents were really busy getting up early in the morning and dropping the kids and coming back, or whatever the schedule might be. And people also started to go back to work in September. So, but I have seen that after the couple of weeks of September, the market kind of bounced back. Even in October now, things don't look really slow. I mean, it was even more crazier last year, but even now, I don't see a lot of slowness in the market. It has picked up again. And my feeling is that it will continue this way at least till next spring, because we do see the interest rates have started to inch up a bit, not a bit, actually, it did go up almost a quarter point in the past few weeks. And so people don't want to lose the opportunity to buy a house now. I have a feeling that things will continue through the winter months. And I think when spring comes back again next year, it will again pop back up. One thing to be cautious about is that the evictions will start. I mean, in New Jersey, you have a moratorium till end of the year by the state. So once the eviction moratorium is lifted, you will start seeing, more sheriff sales and more landlords kind of selling the properties if they got hit. So we'll have to wait and see how that unfolds. But my feeling is that I don't think all the markets will have a glut of houses coming back right away. So we'll have to wait and see how that unfolds next year. But that's the only caution item I would look at when buying something right now. Shumail, I saw you were there. You want to please add anything to this? What I said, if you have any of your experience?
I don't think Shamal is here now.
Okay, or maybe later.
Pike is here. Go ahead, Pike.
Pike,
I
you want to say
actually,
something?
Yeah, I work with Shamal, and I accidentally signed in from his Zoom account earlier.
Okay.
Okay.
And I logged out, and then I came back in.
Oh, no problem. Okay.
But yeah,
Go ahead.
that's
Pike. Go ahead, Ad.
yes.
Yeah. Do you
So
have anything
you want to
else
share
add?
your view of the market?
Yeah, from our perspective, and our main business has switched within the last 2 years to primarily just wholesaling, right? So, we're kind of seeing like the ebbs and flows overall. I would say I would agree with you that within the last, 2-3 months, the market has leveled off a little bit and stabilized. But there's still an increase of demand, and people are still looking for houses that didn't buy them this spring or during the summer. And I think that demand will probably come back around during the springtime of next year. Is it going to be as crazy? Maybe not. Obviously, like you said, no one really has a crystal ball or insight. But I would say, based off of the numbers, and since the financial crisis, America just didn't develop as a country in terms of single family housing. So you're looking at the population, it's increasing. You're also looking at, baby boomers staying in their houses longer. And then on top of that, you have this eviction moratorium. So there's not inventory available. Once the eviction moratorium is over, I do see a lot of landlords getting out of the landlording game and selling distressed properties. That will help, but is it enough inventory? I doubt it. Especially since I think the biggest thing is that this country has not been building at the rate that it should have been since 2008. A lot of developers went under. The bigger ones actually slowed down their operations. And now it's kind of like, catching up to everyone.
Okay. Thanks, Pike. I think we're almost out of time. So just to be courteous to people, it's almost 10 o'clock now. So I'll end here. Thanks everyone for attending. And if you need another session later, maybe we can organize something later. Again, I would like to thank everyone for joining today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Back
you,
to you,
Amir.
Mushi.
And one more thing, I think those who asked for at least the market, look into this. If you are following what's happening in the stock market, especially the REIT stocks, the SPG and a couple others here in USA. But biggest thing it should be aware of it, that in Evergrande, what's happening in China market. China is the second biggest economy after USA. So in Chinese market, real estate is facing difficulties like what we have seen here in USA in 2007, 2008. So if their biggest companies are having difficulty to pay off their interest, they're defaulting their bond, and the development is slowing down. Second biggest, the real estate in China also having the same issues. If this is going like this, then there will be ripple effect is going to happen in USA too. Just be careful. That's all. Okay. And especially in USA, those who is looking at everything we talked about today, residential, but there are some commercial, very good property out there. If you have a bigger investment that you wanna do that, you might consider doing that. I see some people mention that, hey, what if we put the money, we build it, or have you thought of commercial side? There are very good discounted properties in commercial side. And don't forget, next week we are going to do this mortgage. So we have the speaker Joseph, is there. I think some of you already know who he is in the community here in state of New Jersey. So he's going to be coming and talking about HELOC and a couple other things that people asked for it. So after he's doing talk about loan, what's happening, interest rate, then if you guys have interest to learn about more other finance and opportunities, especially guidance and other things, how it works, or what should you do, not, that we can do that similar sessions in future. Just let us know. All right.
Okay. I shared my number on the chat. If you have any more questions, you can feel free to WhatsApp.
Oh, did you share it to everybody?
Yeah, I shared my number, my phone number.
Yeah, my name, my contact number. Yeah, just put your name also in there. So in case people know that your name, not everybody knows.
Thanks for watching. Visit our website urbanhood.org and join our community at meetup.com and look for financial freedom for you. Thank you, and we hope to see you soon.